maximize continuous competition for launch services as the Space Force initiates planning for Phase 3, specifically for those technology areas that are unique to existing and emerging national security requirements. C. Notification. If the Secretary of Defense or the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office determines that a program requiring launch services that could be met using Phase 2 contracts will instead use an alternative launch procurement approach, not later than 7 days after the date of such determination, the Secretary of Defense or, as appropriate, the Director of National Intelligence, shall submit to the appropriate congressional committees, 1. A notification of such determination, 2. A certification that the alternative launch procurement approach is in the national security interest of the United States, and 3. An outline of the cost analysis and any other rationale for such determination. D. Report. 1. Requirement. Not later than 90 days after the date of the enactment of this Act, the Secretary of Defense, in coordination with the Chief of Space Operations and the Director of the Space Development Agency, and in consultation with the Director of National Intelligence, including with respect to the views of the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office, shall submit to the appropriate congressional committees a report on the emerging launch requirements in the areas of space access, mobility, and logistics that will not be met by Phase 2 capabilities. 2. Elements. The report under paragraph 1 shall include the following: A. An examination of potential benefits of competing one or more launches that are outside of Phase 2 capabilities, focused on accelerating the rapid development and on-orbit deployment of enabling and transformational technologies required to address any emerging requirements, including with respect to I. Delivery of in-space transportation, logistics, and on-orbit servicing capabilities to enhance the persistence, sensitivity, and resiliency of national security space missions in a contested space environment. 2. Routine access to extended orbits beyond geostationary orbits, including cislunar orbits. 3. Greater cislunar awareness capabilities. 4. Vertical integration and standardized payload mating. V. Increased responsiveness for heavy lift capability. 6. The ability to transfer orbits, including point-to-point orbital transfers. 7. Capacity and capability to execute secondary deployments. 8. High-performance upper stages. And 9. Other new missions that are outside the parameters of the 9 design reference missions that exist as of the date of the enactment of this Act. B. A description of how competing space access, mobility, and logistics launches could aid in establishing a new acquisition framework to I. Promote the potential for additional open and sustainable competition for Phase 3, and 2. Re-examine the balance of mission assurance versus risk tolerance to reflect new resilient spacecraft architectures and reduce workload on the federal government and industry to perform mission assurance where appropriate. C. An analysis of how the matters under subparagraphs A and B may help continue to reduce the cost per launch of national security payloads. D. An examination of the effects to the National Security Space Launch Program if contracted launch providers cannot meet all Phase 2 requirements, including with respect to I. The effects to national security launch resiliency, and 2. The cost effects of a launch market that lacks full competition. 3. Form. The report under paragraph 1 shall be submitted in unclassified form, but may include a classified appendix. 4. Briefing. Not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this Act, the Secretary, in consultation with the Director of National Intelligence, shall provide to the appropriate congressional committees a briefing on the report under paragraph 1. E. Definitions. In this section, 1. The term appropriate congressional committees means A. The Congressional Defense Committees, and B. The Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence of the House of Representatives and the Select Committee on Intelligence of the Senate. 2. The term Phase 3 FOOT means, with respect to the National Security Space Launch Program, launch missions ordered under the program after fiscal year 2024. 3. The term Phase 2 FOOT means, with respect to the National Security Space Launch Program, launch missions ordered under the program during fiscal years 2020 through 2024. Sec. 1602. Redesignation of Space Force Acquisition Council. Modifications relating to Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration. A. Modifications to Space Force Acquisition Council. 1. Designation. Section 9021 of Title 10, United States Code, is amended, A. In the section heading, by striking force, B. In subsection, A. By striking Space Force Acquisition Council and inserting Space Acquisition Council, and C. In subsection, C. By striking of the Air Force for Space Systems and Programs and inserting Space Systems and Programs of the Armed Forces. 2. Conforming Amendment, Section 9016, B. 6, B. 2, of Title 10, United States Code, is amended by striking Space Force Acquisition Council and inserting Space Acquisition Council. 3. Clerical Amendment. The table of sections for Chapter 903 of Title 10, United States Code, is amended by striking the item relating to Section 9021 and inserting the following new item: 9021. Space Acquisition Council. 4. References. Any reference to the Space Force Acquisition Council in any law, regulation, map, document, record, or other paper of the United States shall be deemed to be a reference to the Space Acquisition Council. B. Modifications relating to the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration. 1. Space Force Acquisition Council review and certification of determinations of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration. Section 9021, C, of Title 10, United States Code, as amended by subsection A, is further amended, A, by striking the Council and inserting 1. The Council, and b. by adding at the end the following new paragraph. 2a. The Council shall promptly review any determination made by the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration with respect to architecture for the space systems and programs of the Armed Forces under Section 9016, b. 6, b. I of this title, including the requirements for operating such space systems or programs, and 2. Either if the Council finds such a determination to be warranted, certify the determination, or 2. If the Council finds such a determination not to be warranted, decline to certify the determination. b. Not later than 10 business days after the date on which the Council makes a finding with respect to a certification under subparagraph a. The Council shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees a notification of the finding, including a detailed justification for the finding. c. Except as provided in subparagraph d. The Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration may not take any action to implement a determination referred to in subparagraph a until 30 days has elapsed following the date on which the Council submits the notification under subparagraph b. d. The Secretary of Defense may waive subparagraph c. in the event of an urgent national security requirement. 2. The Secretary of Defense shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees a notification of any waiver granted under Clause I, including a justification for the waiver. 2. Department of Defense Space Systems and Programs, Clause I, of Section 9016, b. 6, b. of Title 10, United States Code, is amended to read as follows: be responsible for and oversee all architecture and integration with respect to the acquisition of the space systems and programs of the Armed Forces, including in support of the Chief of Space Operations under Section 9082 of this title. 3. Transfer of acquisition projects for space systems and programs, Section 956, b. 3, of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020, Public Law 116-92, 133 Stat 1566, 10 U.S.C. 9016 Note, is amended by striking of the Air Force and inserting of the Armed Forces. 4. Designation of Force Design Architect for Department of Defense Space Systems. Not later than 90 days after the date of the enactment of this Act, the Secretary of Defense shall a. designate the Chief of Space Operations the Force Design Architect for Space Systems of the Armed Forces, and b. submit to the Congressional Defense Committees a certification of such designation. Sec. 1603. Delegation of authorities to Space Development Agency. Section 9086 of Title 10, United States Code, as redesignated by Section 1081, is amended by adding at the end the following new subsection: d. Delegation of authorities. 1. With respect to Tranche 0 capabilities and Tranche 1 capabilities, to the extent practicable, the Secretary of the Air Force, acting through the Service Acquisition Executive for Space Systems and Programs, shall ensure the delegation